The morning fog clung to Savannah's cobblestone streets, wrapping the Chatham County Courthouse in a ghostly haze. My heels clicked against the stone steps, each sound sharper than the last, as if trying to anchor the tremor in my chest. I'm Kane Monroe, 28. A community organizer who'd built a women's education fund from nothing, only to see it twisted into a weapon against me. Today wasn't supposed to be my fight. I was here for a cousin's custody hearing, or so my older sister, Celine, had claimed, but as I gripped my leather portfolio, the same one I'd carried through my master's defense at Vanderbilt, I felt the weight of a truth I wasn't ready to face. This was a trap, and Celine was holding the strings. The courthouse lobby gleamed with polished marble, its sterile lights casting long shadows. A security guard waved me through with barely a glance, but I felt eyes on me darting, judging, the kind that never meet yours directly. Across the atrium, my family stood like a tableau of betrayal. Mom, rigid in her navy dress, arms crossed as if shielding herself from me. Celine, 32, radiant in a cream blazer, her legs crossed with the effortless poise of someone who'd already won. Her smirk was a blade, honed over years of cutting me down in private, now wielded in public. A clerk at the registration desk beckoned me over. Her tone clipped. Name, Kane Monroe, I said, offering a faint smile. She scanned her list, her brow furrowing. Here you are? She handed me a badge, and I clipped it to my blazer without looking. Then I froze. In bold black letters, Kane. Nobody. My breath caught, a chill snaking up my spine. This is wrong, I said, keeping my voice low but firm. It should say Kane Monroe. The clerk didn't look up. That's what's on the list. Ma'am, if you want to contest it, you'll need to wait. But you can't enter without a badge. I glanced across the atrium. Celine was watching, her phone raised, the soft click of a photo capturing my stunned expression. Her grin was childlike, gleeful, as if she'd just pulled the perfect prank. Mom turned away, her lips tight. I smoothed the badge against my chest, letting its edges bite into my palm, and nodded. If Celine wanted a reaction, she wouldn't get it. Not yet. The hallway to the courtroom was too quiet, each step sinking heavier into the marble. Celine passed me, her jasmine perfume trailing like a taunt. Nobody invited you? Kane, she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. Just so you know. She didn't wait for a reply, her heels clicking ahead as if she owned the air itself. I found a seat at the back, far from the family row where Mom and Celine sat whispering, their laughter sharp enough to cut glass. The badge burned against my chest, a declaration of how they'd always seen me, invisible, irrelevant. The sister who dared to shine too bright. I'd been the quiet one, the one who said sure to keep the peace, who thought silence was strength. They'd mistaken it for weakness, and today, Celine was betting on breaking me. The courtroom doors opened, and I stood to enter, my portfolio clutched like a shield. But before I reached the threshold, Celine's hand grazed my arm, guiding me toward a side door marked restroom. We need to talk, she said, her voice syrupy but laced with steel. I should have pulled away, but years of habit, years of believing she might. Just once, be sincere made me follow. The bathroom was cold, its fluorescent lights buzzing. Celine locked the door behind us, her smile gone. You shouldn't be here. Kane, she said, stepping closer. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm here for our cousin, I said, my voice steady. You told me. There is no cousin, she cut in, her eyes glinting. This is about you. You and your little foundation. Thinking you're better than us. You need to learn your place. Before I could react, she grabbed my shoulders, her nails digging in. From her purse, she pulled a pair of electric clippers, the kind barbers use. The buzz filled the room, loud and final. Hold still, she hissed, pinning me against the sink. I struggled, but her grip was iron, her knee pressing into my thigh. The first swipe of the clippers tore across my scalp, strands of my chestnut hair falling like ash. Stop, I shouted, twisting. But she was stronger, fueled by something deeper than anger, envy, maybe, or fear. She worked fast, jagged patches forming as my scalp burned under the blade. Tears stung my eyes, not from pain, but from the violation, the deliberate cruelty of it. When she finished, she stepped back, panting, her blazer slightly askew. "Now you look like nobody," she said, tossing the clippers into the trash. "Go home, Kane. You don't belong here." She unlocked the door and left, her heels echoing down the hall. I stood frozen, staring at my reflection in the smudged mirror. My head was a patchwork of stubble, my eyes wide but dry. My hands shook as I touched the uneven scalp, the cold air stinging the exposed skin. Celine hadn't just humiliated me, she'd tried to erase me, to make me too ashamed to walk into that courtroom. But she didn't know me. Not really. I pulled a silk scarf from my bag, one I'd packed for no reason other than instinct, and wrapped it around my head, tying it into a knot that felt like defiance. The mirror showed someone new, not broken, but sharpened, like a blade forged in fire. I straightened my blazer, adjusted the badge, nobody, and walked back to the courtroom. The gallery was filling, whispers rippling as I took my seat. Celine sat up front, her composure flawless, as if nothing had happened. Mom glanced at my scarf, her eyes flickering with something guilt. Maybe, or shame, but she looked away. Across the room, a man in a worn suit sat quietly, his gaze fixed on Celine. He didn't take notes, didn't whisper, just watched her with an intensity that felt like a warning. I didn't know who he was, but something about him steadied me, like he was waiting for the same truth I was. The judge hadn't arrived yet, but Celine's attorney stood, smoothing his tie with theatrical flair. "Your Honor, we'd like to begin with a presentation to provide context for this hearing," he said, his voice dripping with authority. The screen lit up, and there was my face, blown up, the badge clear. "K. Nobody?" Below it, a timestamp 7:16 May? Before I'd even arrived, my pulse quickened. They'd faked it, altered the metadata to make me look unhinged, an intruder in a case I hadn't asked to be part of. Gasps echoed through the room. Celine's attorney gestured smoothly. This individual inserted herself into these proceedings, uninvited and unstable. We believe this speaks to her character. Unstable. The word hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. My nails dug into the bench, grounding me. I thought of Langston, my fiancé, the man Celine had mocked as a nobody lawyer when I'd introduced him last year. She didn't know he'd been appointed a circuit judge 3 months ago. She didn't know he was walking through that side door right now, his robe catching the light, his gavel about to fall. I leaned back, my scarf tight, my badge defiant. Celine wanted a show. She was about to get one. The Chatham County Courthouse in Savannah was a theater of whispers, its marble walls amplifying every murmur as the courtroom settled into an uneasy hush. I sat at the back, my silk scarf tight around my freshly shaved scalp. The badge nobody pinned defiantly to my blazer. My name is Kane Monroe, 28, a community organizer who'd built the Monroe Women's Education Fund from scratch, only to have it weaponized against me by my sister, Celine. The sting of her clippers still burned, but her real attack was unfolding now. Projected on a screen for all to see a photo of me, time-stamped falsely at 7:16. My branding me an uninvited, unstable intruder in a case she'd fabricated. Celine sat up front, her cream blazer pristine, her expression a mask of calm authority. She'd orchestrated this, lured me here under the guise of a cousin's custody hearing, caved my head to shame me, and now framed me with a doctored image. The courtroom's fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, mirroring the tension coiling in my chest. My mother, 2 rows behind Celine, stared at her hands, avoiding my gaze. The weight of her silence was heavier than Celine's cruelty. Celine's attorney, a slick man with a practiced drawl, paced before the bench. "Your Honor, we submit Exhibit 14B, a psychological evaluation from the Savannah Behavioral Health Center, dated November 2012, concerning Miss Kane Monroe." He clicked the projector, and a clinical document filled the screen. Diagnosis: emotional instability, behavioral dysregulation. The words hit like a punch, each syllable a lie dressed in official letterhead. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. A juror leaned forward. Another whispered to her neighbor. My nails dug into the wooden bench, grounding me against the urge to scream. I was 22 then, not unstable, just a young woman locked out of our family home during a snowstorm by Celine, barefoot and shaking until a neighbor called an ambulance. Mom had driven me to that hospital, signed the papers, and whispered, "Don't make this bigger than it is." I'd spent 72 hours there, silenced, and we never spoke of it again. Until now, the attorney's voice dripped with feigned concern. This document, unearthed by a concerned party, speaks to Miss Monroe's history of erratic behavior. Her presence here, uninvited, is consistent with this pattern. I forced my face to stay still, my jaw unclenched. Celine's eyes flicked toward me, the faintest smirk tugging at her lips. She thought she'd won, thought this lie would bury me. But she didn't know I'd spent years preparing for her games. In my portfolio, tucked beside my Vanderbilt diploma, was a sealed envelope, letters from my academic advisor and medical records, proving I'd never been diagnosed, never treated, only hospitalized to keep Celine's cruelty quiet. The judge, a stern woman with graying hair, leaned forward. "Miss Monroe, are you aware of this evaluation?" I stood, my scarf a quiet rebellion against the shame Celine had tried to carve into me. "Your Honor, that document is a fabrication. I was never diagnosed with any condition. In November 2012, I was hospitalized against my will after a family member, my sister, Celine, locked me out in a snowstorm. The records were created to avoid scrutiny, not to address my health." A gasp echoed from the gallery. The judge's brow furrowed, her pen pausing over her notes. "Do you have evidence to support this claim?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I opened my portfolio and handed the clerk a folder. "These are notarized letters from Dr. Elaine Carter, my academic advisor at Vanderbilt, and medical records from my primary physician, confirming I have no history of mental health treatment. The hospital stay was coerced, and I was released with no diagnosis." The clerk passed the folder to the judge, who scanned the pages, her expression unreadable. Celine's smirk faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. She hadn't expected me to fight back. Not like this. Her attorney cleared his throat, scrambling. "Your Honor, we'll need time to verify these documents." "Objection noted," the judge said, her tone clipped. "The court will review this evidence. Proceed?" As I sat, my eyes caught movement in the back corner. The man in the worn suit, Vincent, I'd heard someone call him, was watching, his gaze fixed on Celine. He hadn't taken a single note, but his presence felt like a storm gathering. He leaned toward a bailiff, whispering something, and the bailiff nodded, slipping out of the room. Vincent's eyes met mine for a fleeting moment, and I saw something in them, not pity, but recognition, like he'd seen Celine's playbook before. Celine's attorney pressed on, undeterred. "Your Honor, we have an expert witness to provide further context." The doors opened, and a tall man with a goatee strode in. Dr. Adrian Wolfe, introduced as a psychiatrist with 22 years of experience. My stomach twisted. I'd never met him, but his name was familiar, mentioned once by a Vanderbilt colleague during a funding dispute Celine had stirred years ago. Dr. Wolfe took the stand, his voice smooth and cold. "In 2014, during the Vanderbilt Community Grants cycle, I was consulted about Kane Monroe. Concerns were raised about erratic behavior and defiance, potentially linked to emotional dysregulation. I recommended a temporary leave, though no formal treatment was mandated." The room spun. I gripped the bench, my breath shallow. He was lying, weaving a fiction that dovetailed with Celine's forged report. I'd never been evaluated, never taken a leave. I'd won that grant cycle, securing $200,000 for the Monroe Women's Education Fund, only for Celine to claim credit. Langston, my fiancé, had helped me compile the application, his meticulous legal mind catching every detail. He'd warned me then. "Celine doesn't just compete, she erases." I glanced at the side door, willing Langston to walk through, his judicial robe a shield against this onslaught. He wasn't here yet, but I knew he was coming. 3 weeks ago, he'd filed a recusal from family cases to avoid conflicts, but a last-minute substitution had placed him on this docket. Celine didn't know, and that was my ace. Before I could speak, Vincent stood, his movements deliberate. He approached the bailiff, handing over a sealed manila envelope with a faint Department of Justice watermark. The bailiff passed it to the judge, who opened it slowly, her eyes narrowing as she read. The courtroom went still, the air thick with anticipation. "Mr. Wexler," the judge said. Addressing Vincent, "You claim this pertains to the hearing?" "Yes, Your Honor," Vincent said, his voice calm but unyielding. Exhibit 14B, the psychological evaluation, was obtained illegally. We've traced unauthorized access to sealed medical records through a court system login tied to Celine Monroe. This is part of a broader pattern of ethical violations we've been investigating. Celine's head snapped toward Vincent, her composure cracking. "This is outrageous," she snapped, rising. "You can't just accuse me without proof." Vincent didn't flinch. "The proof is in that envelope login timestamps, IP addresses, and a list of accessed files, including Miss Monroe's. Accessing sealed HIPAA-protected records is a federal offense." "Miss Monroe, you know that." The judge raised a hand, silencing Celine. "Mr. Wexler, you're suggesting misconduct by a party to this case." "I'm confirming it," Vincent said, placing another document on the desk. Celine Monroe used Judge Harmon's staff credentials to query sealed records 2 months ago, specifically targeting Kane Monroe. "We have the audit trail," Celine's attorney stammered. "Your Honor, we need time to review." "Sit down," the judge snapped, her eyes on the documents. She looked at me, then at Celine, her expression hardening. "Miss Monroe, Celine, do you have a response?" Celine sank into her seat, her face pale, her hands trembling. For the first time, she looked small, her power unraveling under the weight of truth. I sat still, my scarf a quiet defiance, my badge a badge of survival. The side door creaked, and I felt it before I saw it, the steady rhythm of Langston's footsteps, his robe catching the light. Celine didn't know what was coming, but I did, and when his gavel fell, her world would collapse. The Chatham County Courthouse in Savannah pulsed with a tense silence, the kind that settles just before a storm breaks. I sat at the back of the courtroom, my silk scarf a quiet defiance against the shaved scalp Celine had left me with. The badge case, nobody pinned like a medal of survival. "My name is Kane Monroe, 28, a community organizer who'd poured my heart into the Monroe Women's Education Fund, only to have it twisted into a weapon by my sister, Celine." Moments ago, Vincent Wexler, a Department of Justice investigator, had exposed Celine's illegal access to my sealed medical records, unraveling her carefully staged attack. But the real reckoning was about to begin, and it would come from the man Celine had dismissed as irrelevant, my fiancé, Langston. The judge's voice cut through the hush. "We'll take a brief recess to review the new evidence." She stood, her robes rustling, and the room stirred attorneys shuffling papers, spectators whispering. Celine sat up front, her cream blazer still pristine, but her hands betrayed her, clenched tight in her lap. Her attorney leaned in, murmuring urgently, but her eyes darted toward the side door, as if sensing the shift in the air. Mom, 2 rows back, stared at the floor, her handbag clutched like a lifeline. I wondered if she felt the weight of her complicity now, or if she was still clinging to Celine's narrative. Vincent remained in the corner, his worn suit a stark contrast to the polished chaos around him. His gaze never left Celine, steady and unyielding, like a hunter who'd cornered his mark. He'd handed the judge an envelope proving Celine's federal offense using stolen court credentials to access my records, but I sensed he was holding something bigger. A card he hadn't yet played. My portfolio, still open from presenting my Vanderbilt letters, lay heavy in my lap. Those documents had dismantled Celine's fake psychological report, but they were just the beginning. The courtroom doors swung open, and the bailiff's voice boomed. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Langston Monroe presiding." My heart skipped, a mix of pride and anticipation. Langston entered, his judicial robe flowing, his face a mask of calm authority. The man who'd traced poetry on my skin at midnight now held the gavel, his presence commanding the room. I caught the faintest glint in his eyes, not for me, but for justice, the kind he'd sworn to uphold when he took the bench 3 months ago. Celine's head whipped around, her composure shattering. She let out a sharp, incredulous laugh, her voice cutting through the silence. "You've got to be kidding me," she said, loud enough for the gallery to hear. Her fiancé, "This is a farce." Her attorney grabbed her arm, hissing, "Quiet, Celine." But she shook him off, her face flushed with defiance. What's next? Langston, she sneered. Standing, a jury of Kane's book club. This is a conflict of interest. Langston's gaze didn't waver. He adjusted his glasses, his voice even but laced with steel. Miss Monroe, I filed a recusal from all familial cases 3 weeks ago, as documented with the clerk's office. My assignment today is procedural, approved by the circuit court. If you have objections, file them properly. Now, sit down. Celine froze, her bravado crumbling under his calm authority. She sank into her seat, her lips pursed. But the room felt her defeat. The gallery buzzed, jurors exchanging glances. Mom's face paled, her hands trembling. Langston tapped the file before him, his movements deliberate. Please enter Exhibit 7C into the record a full audit disclosure of the Monroe Women's Education Fund and associated nonprofit activities. The screen behind him flickered to life, displaying a spreadsheet of financial transactions, vendor names, wire transfers, timestamps. I'd seen parts of this audit, shared with me by Langston late one night when he'd uncovered the first discrepancy, but seeing it projected now, under the courtroom's harsh lights, made my skin tingle. Langston's voice was a scalpel, precise and unyielding. According to this report, $480,000 was diverted from the Monroe Women's Education Fund through shell entities, Shellheart Consulting, Red Tree Digital, and Astor Foundation, all traced to personal accounts controlled by Celine Monroe. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. These transfers occurred during fiscal years when the fund was listed as inactive, meaning Kane Monroe's allocated portion was frozen but used as collateral for private debt clearance. Gasps rippled through the room. Celine's attorney shot up. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We haven't had time to review. Sit down, Langston said, his tone leaving no room for argument. The audit was conducted by an independent firm and verified by the Department of Justice. Mr. Wexler, do you have additional context? Vincent stood, his presence quiet but commanding. Yes, Your Honor. Our investigation into Celine Monroe's activities extends beyond this case. We've uncovered a pattern of financial misconduct, including falsified grant applications and unauthorized use of nonprofit funds for personal gain. The DOJ is prepared to pursue charges under Fiduciary Violation Code 38, 4B, and federal fraud statutes. Celine's face drained of color, her hands gripping the table. Her attorney stammered, This is an ambush. We demand a continuance. Denied, Langston said, his gavel tapping once, sharp and final. The evidence is clear. This court finds substantial cause to refer this matter to the Department of Justice for a civil breach inquiry. Effective immediately, Celine Monroe is barred from any operational role in the Monroe Women's Education Fund, pending investigation. The room erupted in whispers, jurors leaning forward, reporters scribbling furiously. Celine's eyes darted left, then right, searching for an escape that didn't exist. I sat still, my scarf tight, my badge a silent testament to her failed attempt to erase me. But the real surprise came from Vincent, who stepped forward with another envelope, this one marked with a red confidential stamp. Your Honor, Vincent said, there's one more item, a notarized affidavit from Franklin J. Monroe, dated 6 months before his passing in 2024. It details the origins of the Monroe Women's Education Fund. My breath caught. Dad's affidavit. I'd heard rumors he'd written something before his death, but Celine had claimed it was lost. Langston took the envelope, his expression unreadable as he broke the seal. He read silently, then looked at me, a flicker of something pride, maybe crossing his face. For the record, Langston said, Franklin J. Monroe states that the Monroe Women's Education Fund was conceived and developed solely by Kane Monroe. Celine Monroe was named public face to secure donor confidence, a decision he later regretted. He acknowledges withholding Kane's rightful recognition due to family pressure. The courtroom went silent, the weight of Dad's words settling like dust after an explosion. Mom gasped, her handbag slipping to the floor. Celine shot up, her voice shrill. That's a lie. Dad would never. Sit down, Miss Monroe, Langston said, his gavel tapping twice. The affidavit is notarized, witnessed, and corroborated by financial records. This court recognizes Kane Monroe as the sole founder of the fund. All documents will be amended accordingly. Celine sank back, her attorney pressing a hand to his brow, already bracing for the fallout. I felt no triumph, only clarity, a truth I'd carried for years, now spoken aloud. My scarf felt lighter, my badge irrelevant. Across the room, Vincent gave me a subtle nod, as if to say, "This is just the beginning." Langston's eyes met mine for the briefest moment, a silent promise that justice wasn't done yet. He stood, nodding to the clerk. "Court is adjourned pending DOJ review." His gavel fell, the sound echoing like a door slamming on Celine's empire. As the gallery stirred, I remained seated, my portfolio open, Dad's affidavit a lifeline I hadn't expected. Celine's world was crumbling, but mine was rising, built on truth and the love of a man who'd never let me be nobody. And as I stood to leave, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the moment everything changed. The Chatham County Courthouse in Savannah stood quiet as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across its marble steps. Inside, the courtroom had emptied, leaving only echoes of the gavel's final strike. I stood in the hallway, my silk scarf still wrapped tight around my shaved scalp. The badge, nobody now tucked into my pocket like a relic of a battle won. My name is Kane Monroe, 28. A community organizer who'd reclaimed the Monroe Women's Education Fund from my sister Celine's grasp. Hours ago, my fiancé, Judge Langston Monroe, had exposed Celine's $480 embezzlement scheme and confirmed my role as the fund's true founder, dismantling her empire with a notarized affidavit from our late father. But victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like a weight, heavy with truths I could no longer ignore. The hallway was nearly deserted, its marble gleaming under flickering lights. Celine stood by a window, her cream blazer wrinkled, her posture slumped. For the first time, she looked human, stripped of the invincible aura she'd worn like armor. Mom lingered nearby, her navy dress creased, her eyes darting between us as if hoping for a script she'd never written. I clutched my leather portfolio, the same one that had held the Vanderbilt letters and Dad's affidavit, now a symbol of my refusal to be erased. Celine turned as I approached, her eyes red but defiant. "You think you've won, Kane," she said, her voice low, venomous. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You'll regret this." I stepped closer, my voice steady. "You humiliated yourself, Celine. You caved my head, faked records, stole $500,000. This isn't my fault, it's yours." Her lips trembled, but she forced a smile. "You always had to make everything about you. Poor Kane. The victim. You'll never be anything without me." Mom gasped, stepping forward. "Kane, please. She's your sister. We're family. Can't we just talk?" I turned to her, the woman who'd signed me into a hospital at 22 to silence Celine's cruelty, who'd looked away while I was branded nobody. "Family," I said, my voice sharp. "You chose Celine every time? Mom, you let her lock me out in a snowstorm? Let her claim my work. Let her shave my head. Where were you when I needed family?" Mom's face crumpled, tears spilling. I thought I was protecting you both. I didn't know how far it went." "You knew," I said, softer but firm. "You just didn't care enough to stop it." Celine laughed, bitter and hollow. "Oh, please. You love this, don't you? Playing the martyr, turning everyone against me. Even Dad's affidavit was a lie you twisted. It was his truth," I said, my chest tight. "He saw you for what you are, Celine, a thief, a liar, and he chose to make it right." Her eyes flashed, but before she could retort, a voice cut through the tension. "Miss Monroe Kane. I mean, it was Naira, a young courthouse intern I'd seen bustling around earlier. Her brown eyes were fierce, her badge glinting under the lights. "I need to say something." Celine rolled her eyes. "What now?" Naira squared her shoulders. "I interned for your legal team last summer. Celine, you treated me like garbage, yelled at me, made me forge timestamps on documents, including that photo of Kane's badge. I kept records, emails, texts, everything. I gave them to Mr. Wexler this morning." My breath caught. Naira was the whistleblower behind Vincent's evidence, the one who'd helped unravel Celine's lies. Celine's face went ashen, her hands shaking. "You little..." "Enough," I said, stepping between them. You're done. Celine. The DOJ has everything. Naira's proof. Vincent's audit. Dad's affidavit. You can't talk your way out of this. Naira nodded, her voice steady. I saw what you did to people. Celine. Not just Kane interns. Clerks. Anyone who didn't bow to you. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Mom sobbed, covering her face. Celine. Why? Why did you do this? Celine spun on her, furious. Because I had to. Kane was always the favorite dad's little genius. Langston's perfect fiancé. I built the fund's image, made it something, and she just took it. You stole it, I said, my voice calm but cutting. And you lost it. The fund's mine now, legally and rightfully. You're nothing without your lies? Celine's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. She straightened, brushing her blazer as if reclaiming her armor. This isn't over. Kane, I'll appeal. I'll fight. Good luck, I said, turning away. You'll need it. As I walked toward the exit, Naira fell into step beside me. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner, she said. I was scared, but when I saw your scarf, how you kept going, I knew I had to. I touched the scarf, its silk warm against my skin. You did more than enough, Naira. Thank you, she smiled, hesitant but bright. The other interns are talking. They're ready to testify if the DOJ calls. Celine's done. Outside, the savannah air was cool, the cobblestones glinting under streetlights. Langston waited by the steps, his robe gone, replaced by a simple suit. He didn't speak, just opened his arms, and I sank into them, the weight of the day melting against his warmth. You were incredible in there, he said, his voice low. I'm proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, pulling back to meet his eyes. Or Naira. Or Vincent. Or Dad? He nodded, his hand grazing my scarf. Your dad would be proud. Kane, you took back what was yours? I glanced at the courthouse, its silhouette stark against the dusk. It's not over yet. The DOJ, the fund, rebuilding, it's a lot. One step at a time, he said, squeezing my hand. You've got this. And I've got you. My phone buzzed a news alert. Savannah court rules in favor of Kane Monroe. Exposes sister's fraud. The article quoted Naira's testimony and Vincent's audit, with comments flooding in. Kane's a hero. Celine's finished. The truth always wins. Another text. From a community center volunteer. The girls want you back. Kane. The fund's yours. Let's rebuild. I tucked the phone away, my chest lighter than it had been in years. Celine's lies were unraveling. Mom's silence exposed. And my name, Kane Monroe, was no longer nobody. It was a promise. A foundation. A future I'd build on my terms. As Langston and I walked into the evening, I felt it. Not victory, but freedom. And it was enough. The Savannah sunrise painted the sky in hues of golden peach, its light spilling through the windows of the newly rebuilt Monroe Women's Education Center. It was October 2027, a year since the courtroom battle that had stripped my sister Celine of her lies and restored my name. I'm Kane Monroe, Pune Gnostic, now 29, standing at the heart of a community hub I'd fought to reclaim, the Monroe Women's Education Fund. Once tainted by Celine's $480,000 embezzlement, was thriving again. Its mission to empower young women stronger than ever. My hair had grown back, a soft chestnut bob framing my face, but the silk scarf I had worn that day in court hung framed on the wall, a reminder of the battle I'd won. Not just for myself, but for every girl who'd been told she was nobody. The center buzzed with life. Girls laughed in the art room, their voices mingling with the scent of fresh paint and coffee. Volunteers bustled, pinning flyers for coding workshops and scholarship drives. I walked the halls, my sneakers quiet on the polished wood floors, touching door frames and window ledges as if to confirm this was real. The court had ordered full restitution shell companies shut down, crooked contracts revoked, every stolen dollar returned. The center wasn't just rebuilt, it was reborn. Its dove-gray walls a canvas for the dreams of those who filled it. I paused at the bulletin board, where a news clipping hung. Kane Monroe restores education fund, inspires global movement. The article detailed the DOJ's ongoing investigation into Celine, now facing federal fraud charges. Her once glamorous life reduced to a rented apartment and a suspended law license. Mom had moved to Atlanta. Her church friends distant. Her silence a confession she'd never voice. Celine hadn't apologized, not directly, but the absence of her venom was its own kind of peace. My phone buzzed with the text from Naira, the former intern whose courage had helped expose Celine's forged documents. Just testified at the DOJ hearing. Celine's team is scrambling. You should see her face, priceless. I smiled, replying, thanks for everything. Naira, you're a hero. Her evidence, alongside Vincent Wexler's audit and Dad's affidavit, had sealed Celine's fate. But I felt no need to gloat. Her downfall wasn't my victory. This center was. In the common room, a group of girls worked on a mural, their brushes dancing across a canvas of vibrant blues and greens. Ari, a 20-year-old volunteer with thick glasses and a bright laugh, waved me over. Kane, check this out. The girls want you to see it. I approached, my chest warming at their grins. At the mural's center was a tree, its branches stretching wide, each leaf painted with a name girls who'd passed through the center, their dreams taking root. My name was there too, in bold gold. Kane Monroe. Founder. I blinked back tears, not of pain, but of pride. One girl, maybe 9, with braids and a shy smile, tugged my sleeve. Miss Kane, I made you something. She held out a small origami crane, its red paper folded with care, its wings slightly uneven but perfect in their effort. I froze, memories flooding back. Years ago, I'd given Celine a crane like this, a teenage gesture of love after her debate win. She'd laughed, crumpled it, called it pointless. Now, this child offered me the same symbol. No malice, just kindness. I took it gently, its warmth lingering from her small hands. Thank you, I said, my voice hushed. It's beautiful. She beamed. I make them when I'm happy. I thought you might need one. I nodded, my throat tight. I do. More than you know. Later, in my office, I set the crane on my desk, its red glow catching the sunlight. A sealed envelope sat nearby, delivered that morning. The return address in Celine's sharp handwriting. I'd expected it eventually, a plea, an apology, maybe a veiled threat. I lifted it, feeling its weight, but didn't open it. Her words couldn't undo the past, couldn't touch the life I'd built. I dropped it into a drawer, unopened, and closed it with a soft click. Langston had visited a few weeks ago, his presence steady as ever. He'd stood beside me in the art room, watching the girls paint, and asked, "Do you want me to stay?" Kane, really stay. I'd thought of his gavel, his calm in that courtroom, the love that had carried me through, but I'd smiled, touching his hand. I need to know who I am on my own first. Not as your fiancé, not as Celine's sister, just me. He'd nodded. No argument, just understanding. You're already her. Kane, you always were. He'd left with a promise to return when I was ready, and I knew he meant it. My phone lit up with another alert. Kane Monroe trending globally. Messages poured in from strangers. Girls in Nairobi, Mumbai, Bogota. My sister tried to stop my scholarship. You showed me I could fight. I was the nobody in my family. Now I'm applying to college. I replied to one, a girl in Accra. You're never nobody. Shine your light. I stepped outside. The Savannah air crisp, the cobblestones glowing under the morning sun. The center's sign gleamed. Monroe Women's Education Center, empowering futures. I held the crane, its warmth a quiet anchor. Celine's lies, Mom's silence. The badge that branded me, they were shadows, fading against the life I'd built. I wasn't the girl who'd walked into that courthouse, trembling under a scarf. I was Kane Monroe, founder, survivor, beacon. A breeze stirred, lifting the crane's wings. I tucked it into my pocket, its promise close. Healing wasn't loud, wasn't a firework. It was a red paper crane, folded with care, saying, "You're allowed to begin again." And as I walked back inside, the girls' laughter echoing, I knew I already had. The fluorescent lights of the Savannah dollar store buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow over aisles of cheap shampoo and canned soup. It was August 2028, and I, Celine Monroe, 34, stood behind the counter, my navy apron stiff against my skin, scanning barcodes with mechanical precision. 2 years ago, I was the face of the Monroe Women's Education Fund. My name synonymous with power. My cream blazer, a symbol of untouchable elegance. Now, my law license was revoked, my savings drained by legal fees, and my life confined to a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint. The courtroom where I'd tried to break my sister Kane was a distant memory, but its echoes haunted me, her scarf, her badge, her truth, dismantling everything I'd built. I wasn't supposed to end up here. I was the golden child, the one who carried the family's image, the one who made Mom smile and Dad nod with pride. Kane was the shadow, the quiet one who scribbled in notebooks and dreamed too big. I'd clipped her wings, shaved her head, forged records, diverted $480 because I had to. She was stealing my light, my legacy. But when Langston's gavel fell, when Dad's affidavit named her the true founder, I didn't just lose the fund, I lost myself. The bell above the door jingled, snapping me back. A woman in a sundress dropped a basket of toiletries on the counter. Quickly, please, she said, barely glancing at me. I scanned her items, my hands steady but my chest tight. I used to command rooms, now I was invisible. As she left, I caught my reflection in the glass door, hair pulled back. No makeup, eyes hollow. I looked like someone I'd have pitied once, someone I'd have called a nobody. At night, my apartment was quiet, the hum of a cheap fan, my only company. I sat at a wobbly table, a half-empty wine glass beside a stack of legal documents, DOJ subpoenas, plea agreements, community service orders. The fraud charges had settled with a fine and probation. I'd avoided prison, but the cost was everything else. Mom called sometimes, her voice heavy with guilt, but I rarely answered. She'd moved to Atlanta, chasing forgiveness from